Thank you. Firstly, can I thank you all for having me at this forum today. It's a real privilege actually to be here and be amongst so many fantastic people that have got so much background, particularly in domestic and family violence. I would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of this land, the First Nation peoples, and also to the elders, past, present and future. On a personal note, can I also thank God Almighty for allowing us all to be here today and ask for His blessing upon all of us for this day. So as is quite obvious to everyone, I'm employed by the Queensland Police Service. However, my role here today is not to speak on behalf of the Police Service, it's to speak on behalf of the Social Justice Interagency Services. It's based in the Torres Straits. Before I move into that though, I will make mention about a couple of points that were raised yesterday. Sister here brought up about PLOs and community police. So I just can affirm with you that the PLOs are not trained to respond as first response officers. It's not in their charter, it's not in their employment contracts. So unfortunately, they're not meant to go as a first response officer to an incident. And in relation to community police, in the Torres Straits we have a bit of a different system. We have Torres Strait Island Police Support Officers, or as we call them, TIPSOs. And these are they're the former community police that were there previously. They're based at each island community. So these were previously run by the Torres Strait Island Regional Council until 2014 when the community police amalgamated with the Queensland Police Service, and that's when they became the TIPSOs. So the name of the TIPSOs says it all. They are an invaluable support for us non-Indigenous police, and there is no way known that we could learn everything there is to know about the cultural protocols and nuances without their help. They guide us whenever we go to the island communities, and they advise us who we should and shouldn't speak to, and if there's sorry business, where we should and shouldn't go, and particularly with the cultural areas of the land where we should and shouldn't go. They're also our eyes and ears on the ground, and when an incident is happening, a response time in the Torres Strait can take up to 6 hours to a day to a week, depending on the severity of the incident. So we rely heavily on them to assist us to do the job. On a local level, in the Torres Strait, we are actually lobbying at the moment for the TIPSOs to gain some legislative powers to assist them perform their roles in the safest way possible. And the only reason I bring this up is that perhaps some of the Cape communities that mentioned this yesterday can have a look at this model, and perhaps if they can determine if it's suitable for them, and then try and progress that further if that's going to help them in the communities there. Okay, so to business at hand. As I mentioned, I'm here to talk about the progress of the SJIS, which is the Social Justice Interagency Service. It's a little different from the topics yesterday. However, I hope that it can demonstrate that we're trying to start some of those conversations in the Torres Strait. Please excuse my lack of PowerPoints. I'm a male, I can only do one thing at a time, so I will press this button eventually. But I'm not very tech savvy, so that's why there's not much to come around. I'll figure it out. Thank you. So a bit of an overview of the SJIS. It was formed in 2010 and is made up of both government and non-government agencies who are directly involved in domestic and family violence incidents or issues. The group was formed to address domestic and family violence in the Torres Strait. Even went back, that was good. The logo for the SJS was designed by one of our members, who's a local artist by the name Marisak Ketchell. He's also the team leader for the social emotional wellbeing team at Torres Strait, and he works for Queensland Health. The slogan beneath the logo reads "Yumi-Wan Miplaway" against domestic and family violence, and is translated to say "Our people, our way" against domestic and family violence. The SJIS has been a relatively informal service until last year when a terms of reference was drafted, and the SJIS held its first ever Community Leaders Roundtable, which was held in May in 2016 and was attended by all the heads of department on Thursday Island and community leaders for the Torres Strait. As a result of this roundtable, a DV pilot project has been created, which I'll talk about shortly. The next big agenda item for the SJIS is the inaugural Domestic and Family Violence Conference, which we're actually hosting next week on Thursday Island. And the aim of this conference is to promote an ongoing awareness of domestic and family violence in the Torres Strait, educate participants on safely responding to domestic and family violence in the communities. We're recruiting champions from each outer island community and equip participants with the knowledge to access and refer to appropriate services and then respond appropriately to domestic and family violence in their community. Being the first domestic and family conference, the SJIS envisaged to recruit these community champions from across the Torres Strait region, as I said previously, to recognise, respond and refer in the appropriate manner. It is also anticipated that these champions will conduct community education and awareness sessions with the support from the social justice interagency services in their own communities in an attempt to get the conversations going and eventually eradicate domestic and family violence. At the conference, we also hope to be able to develop a safety plan that can allow for immediate response to DNFV in their respective communities, and also to commence the framework for domestic and family violence strategy for the Torres Strait. Hang on. Right. As you may be aware, or even as you can see by the slide, the Torres Strait is a unique area and service delivery can be challenging, especially when you're dealing with the incidents on the outer islands. We anticipate that by recruiting these community champions, they'll be able to fill a gap with engaging with their own communities at a grassroots level, and then they can provide ongoing support on the ground. The conference will also look at developing local solutions to address domestic and family violence in the Torres Strait. Okay, I'd like now to talk about the pilot DV project, which has been running in the Torres Strait since the 6th of June 2016. And this project came about as a result, as I mentioned, of the Leaders Roundtable, which was held in May last year. And at the roundtable, a lot of issues were discussed and topics were mentioned as have already been outlined at this forum here, such as lateral violence, disconnectivity, loss of self-identity, loss of culture. And whilst the Community Champion Program is established to assist with these issues, it was also found that as a result of the legislative changes, a lot more domestic and family violence applications of a minor nature were being set before the courts, and in a lot of instances an order was being made against a respondent or a perpetrator without the real understanding of its importance on them, or even how these could affect their standing in the community, their social and sporting interactions, their livelihoods, their employment and their relationships both with family and in a domestic nature. So to this end, the SJIS developed a trial project that could allow certain respondents to domestic and family violence applications to have any court proceedings adjourned so that they could obtain education and therapeutic assistance, and in turn consideration would be given to having the proceedings withdrawn or dismissed by the court. Therefore trying to hold respondents accountable and divert them out of the criminal justice system. When we first established this project, the initial selection process used to determine the suitable candidate was actually very primitive, and it was mainly just for first-time offenders who were deemed to be suitable. And at that stage, a discussion was held between ATSLs and the QPS prosecutor, and the respondent was referred to the appropriate counselling service, and the matter was adjourned for 3 months at court, and at which time the respondent would provide a letter of support to ATSLs and QPS, and the matter would then be struck out or discontinued. However, since that initial implementation, we've met as stakeholders quite a number of times, and we've actually been able to establish some fair guiding principles, whilst also identifying a number of deficiencies that were brought up through the trial and some complicating factors. So some principles founded were: we believe that for any domestic and family violence project to be successful, it must involve both the perpetrator and the victim obtaining culturally sensitive support and assistance. We found that the words and terms used are important, and they can have both a positive and a negative connotation, such as using the words perpetrator and counselling. The SJS would focus only in the Torres Strait for the pilot project, and we're excluding the MPA area at this time. Only as there's different stakeholders in the MPA, it became too big to try and incorporate the MPA and the Torres Strait. The project should be of a voluntary nature for the perpetrators rather than be court ordered. Use of Indigenous counsellors and educators, and relaxation on suitable participants. However, certain respondents would be automatically excluded, these being repeat respondents, those who perpetrated violence with correlating criminal charges, those with a domestic violence order in the last 5 years, those who perpetrated with a weapon. However, there could be some individual situations which would be considered. A more realistic time frame for court adjournments to allow for the respondents to access the therapeutic support. So I moved from 3 months to a period of 4 to 6 months. And a counselling program which would need to cover the following topics. So what is domestic violence? Where does anger come from and why? Power and control. What does a non-violent relationship look like? Understanding the individual, identity and their connection to culture, spirituality, family, community and support services. Core beliefs, roles and responsibilities. We did find that a respondent with existing mental health or alcohol and other drug issues would not be eligible to participate in the project, as these existing issues would need to be addressed prior to the provision of domestic violence support. And Murakoska is the main domestic violence counselling service in the Torres Strait for perpetrators, and initial referrals would be made to Murakoska. Appointments would then be offered on a needs basis, but it's on average is a fortnightly on Thursday Island and monthly on the outer islands. Relationships Australia and Queensland Health can work alongside Murakoska in developing and delivering a holistic program approach. And if a participant is accepted in the project, they would be required to participate in 4 weeks of individual counselling and then another 4 weeks of a group-run program provided by all the social service stakeholders. And after participants complete the project, a report and a WellBeing Program is developed by the counsellors and is once again provided to ATSOS and QPS for then furtherance to the court system where the matter can be dealt with or judicial determination made. So since this started in June 2016, we've actually had 8 referrals to the project. 4 of those were from Thursday Island and Horn Island. There was 2 we did include from the MPA, which is the Northern Peninsula of Australia, and there was 2 from the outer islands. To date, there's been 5 matters that have been finalised with the following outcomes. So there were 2 police withdrawn applications, 2 judicial determinations where the application was dismissed by the court, and 1 order was actually made by consent due to the non-attendance of counselling of the respondent. And there's still 3 matters are still pending. So of the matters where the police withdrew the applications or the applications were dismissed by the court, we actually had some feedback from the participants, and I've just got a few comments here that were made. One person said it was really good. I wouldn't have gone to counselling if I didn't do this program. I have learnt a lot about domestic violence and will keep going for support. Another person said, I had never been to court and it was a one-off stressful situation. The idea of having a court order against me was shame. Having the opportunity to do something about it was really good. Another one, I have fixed a relationship with my mum. We now communicate and I understand it takes 2. I have learned ways to change my behaviour. And the last one was, thank you so much, I'm glad this is over, without me having a mark against my name. So in conclusion, I would like to once again thank you all for allowing me to speak here. It's a great opportunity for me. This is my first forum, so I'm very impressed. And hopefully the information I've provided will be able to be beneficial to you guys. Thank you.